Venus Fridays, here we are again. We're so excited to be with you and talk about what is happening with Venus, our divine feminine, and some other cool, amazing astrology insights this over these couple of weeks. But we start off today with Venus still in the throat chakra part of the story, as well as Venus is in Taurus still. So that's the energy that we're anchoring in as we start this today. But Venus is changing signs, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. So thanks for being here. And Cayelin, what do we want to talk about first? Why don't you start us off?
Oh, well, what do we want to talk about first? So, the solstice, of course. Yeah. So Venus had its throat chakra gate on June 21st, 22nd, depending on your time zone, right in the middle of Taurus. So very cool. And now as we approach this time, we have the moon getting ready to conjunct Mars. So it's interesting to just to look at the fact that Venus conjuncts the moon, and that represents her journey into the underworld or out of the underworld, depending on which part of the cycle it is. And Mars conjuncting the moon represents the journey of Mars, or the tests and trials of the sacred masculine going into the underworld. And this is the fifth time Mars has met with the moon since it went direct back in February. So if we looked at we looked at the labors of Hercules, this would be the fifth trial, and uh, it's about clearing away the excrement. And basically, Hercules reroutes a river and like cleans everything up, and it all gets washed away, which is kind of cool. And then the whole reason that Hercules is doing these tests and trials is he wants immortality. And he hasn't even gone into the underworld yet. He's going to go through a death and rebirth process, but that's what these tests are about, these trials are about. So I find that fascinating, and that's happening as Venus is at the throat chakra gate.
And interesting too that it's like Mars is met with Regulus, the heart of the Lion constellation, and then now the moon is meeting with Mars. So this is a good thing to get out and see in the sky. So this is happening. This is recordings coming out on Friday. By Sunday is when we'll have the moon Mars conjunction. So it's worth checking that out. And you'll see Regulus nearby. So the heart, how do we tune into our heart, our sovereignty, connecting to ourselves? By cleaning out the crap. I like that, right? That works like,
Cleaning out the crap. I was
yeah,
like, that's pretty good.
yeah.
I was delighted to find that out.
It's so true, right? We got to clean out like the crap of our shadow side so we can be in our hearts. So I really appreciate that.
Well, and so just over the tonight, tomorrow night, we'll see Mars is not that far from Regulus. It's still pretty close, and the moon is moving up to be with Regulus exact on the 29th. So, that's something for us to be aware of. And then the moon will move on because it moves pretty fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And it's in Virgo. So this is the sacred expression or the sacred function of the masculine in Virgo, not far from the heart of the lion as well.
Yeah.
So how are
Love
we
it.
operating from our sacred heart energy?
Yeah. And tuning into like our inner sage druid type of archetypes within us.
Yeah.
So then our next thing we're looking at is then Venus meets with the Pleiades. So here we have the divine feminine meeting with the seven sisters. Like there's just like archetypal energy, alchemy layering on top of each other. Just before then Venus is moving into Gemini. So it's like all happening right there in that part of the sky. And Neptune's going retrograde. All of that's happening simultaneously, which is extremely powerful.
Because Venus will be at the early degrees of Gemini, it'll be sextiling Neptune. while it's going retrograde. And as we talked about a little earlier, the Neptune, which is most like Pisces. So some people like to say rules, but we're moving away from the rules. It resonates most. It's most like Pisces, and it's in Aries. And it's going back into Pisces and then back into Aries. And so it's just another signal of how important the cycle of Venus as Aries Pisces, not just Aries, not just Pisces, but really that combination. And Neptune can only do this every 165 years or so. And the last time, I think it only passed the zero Aries point once, not three times like it's doing this time. So this is spectacular in terms of really capturing our attention and feeling into the importance of, we could say, Aries and Pisces, fierce compassion.
I love that. And just Venus moving into Gemini, right? Our sacred feminine now moves into that more trickster, but crazy, brilliant, curious, right? Like that's the thing I think of the most with Gemini. It's so curious. It wants to learn and explore, right? That's where it has a resonance with Sagittarius. The opposite side of its pole is like, ooh, it wants to learn as much as it possibly can, but in a really fun, playful, enjoyable way, right? Right? Not like drudgery, not a bunch of homework you have to get done, but just like what lights you up, what books are you excited to read, or documentaries, or and it has that place of, while we're still in the throat chakra, of how we communicate and write and share our truth and use our voice, right? Because we're in that gate that we're clearing things that quiet and hold our voice in tight or don't feel safe to speak out and speak our authentic, honest, compassionate truth.
I love what you're saying, and because Uranus is also right there and goes into Gemini 3 days later on July 7th. So, I mean, they're like hanging out pretty tight and close for a few days. And Uranus is about expanding consciousness and awareness, but it's also about doing it in ways that are unexpected. Like, wait a second, I didn't see that coming. I was like, and it can be amazing because it's like it takes us in these massive leaps of consciousness that aren't necessarily something we would think about or consider even possible. Um, and here we are. We've got, and then Venus can give voice to that because she's at the throat chakra, so she might be able to figure out how to speak into these what's happening, these mysteries, I guess is the way to say that, these mysteries of how we let go of the things that are in the way of us speaking our voice. It also makes me think of the idea of upper limits, how sometimes we hold ourselves back because we have a belief that we can only go so far for whatever reason. And so we reach an upper limit and then we don't let ourselves go beyond that. How, and Uranus would say, forget the upper limits.
And Gemini too, right? So
Yeah, Gemini too is like,
like
yeah, forget the upper
that
limits.
bringing together of those two energies of like expanding consciousness, but like the awareness of the conscious, right? Like Gemini and Uranus, there's some overlap between those archetypal energies as well. So it'll be really fascinating to see like how do we become more conscious with this shift of Uranus into Gemini? Is
And it's
there,
the first time that Uranus has been here in 83 years, something like that. Like the early 1940s was the last time it went into Gemini.
wow,
And World War II is going on at that time. So hopefully we're not in World War III when this happens, but yeah.
that's
Uh,
interesting. That makes me think I'd like to research if like the Uranus transits kind of align with that whole idea of the fourth turning, right? The like 80-year cycles that of the history of the United States. Ooh, I can't speak to that right now, but now you've sparked my curiosity and I
hey,
want to
well,
kind
maybe
of like,
we'll do that in the next one.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
that's all I was thinking of sharing today for our Venus Fridays. Do you have anything else you want to
Well,
add in?
just one more thing I want to mention because July 4th and 5th, Well, we already talked about July 4th, Venus going into Gemini, but July 5th, the sun is conjunct Sirius. It does that once each year. And the United States Declaration of Independence was created on July 4th because the sun was conjunct Sirius. And they wanted to create something new and different and amazing. And, they had this great vision, which of course hasn't really ever been fully honored or appreciated, but and
Or
has been,
manifested.
yes. That all people have the right to pursue happiness. We could just imagine that that is what's possible. And the sun with Sirius, we don't see Sirius this time of year. It doesn't rise up into the morning sky until August. So it's with the sun for like 70 days. And so this is the high magic. And it was sun with Sirius that inspired the Declaration of Independence to be signed on the day that it was, to be created on the day that it was. And now it's moved a bit because it moves 1 degree every 72 years. So it's more on the 5th or 6th of July, but it's still just something to be aware of that's happening. And of course, Venus going into Gemini right around that time as well. And Uranus right on the heels of that. And so it just feels like that's significant. And it's also setting us up for the fact that Venus and Jupiter are going to be with Sirius in August, something we'll be talking about more, but just to know that we're being set up for that.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that and bringing that in. So wishing you all well from this Venus Fridays, and we will see you on the next one.
Bye, everyone.